Hello, welcome to our Facebook Live with me, Christian Fraser. This is a first for us. We are going to show you behind the scenes of the UK's biggest daily news bulletin, the 6 o'clock news. We're going to show you what goes on here in Studio E at New Broadcasting House in London. We'll show you some of the key personalities of the programme. George Alagaya, our presenter, who's been here for many years, who is just getting his makeup at the moment. We'll cross through the newsroom to the gallery as the programme is being broadcast, and we'll introduce you to the director, Chris Cook, and his team over there. And hopefully at the end of this process, you'll get a feel for how a programme like this is put together and how it all comes together with all the stresses and the pressures. Because remember, this is not rolling news. This is a fixed bulletin of half an hour. So every story, every correspondent has a fixed amount of time and a deadline to work to. Now, before I introduce you to George and some of the team, I'm just going to show you around Studio E. And I should encourage you as well at this point to send in your questions. So at the bottom here, there is a little space for you to send in your questions. Get your questions in for any of the team that we meet along the way, and we'll get as many answers as we can. But this, as I say, is Studio E, and through there is the newsroom. You'll be familiar with that view if you watch BBC News. That's the biggest newsroom in the world, and that's just one floor of it. But here in Studio E, you will notice that it's fully automated. So all these cameras are on rails. There are no camera operators in here, save for Robin, who's following me around. And if you're wondering how Chris, the director, knows where these cameras are at any one point, that's because there's a snoop camera just up here, and it gives you a view of where the cameras are on the rails. But nothing goes on in this room, though, without the say-so of the floor manager. So let me quickly introduce you to Jeff. Hello, Jeff. Tell us what you do.
Well, basically, I'm in charge of health and safety in the studio. That means putting guests on, correspondence, looking after George. I also give George radio mics, radio talkback, and I print out hard copies of the actual scripts, just in case audio fails.
Okay, so your job is to make him as happy and as stress-free as possible.
Absolutely.
In this next half hour. Is it easier when you work in an automated newsroom like this?
It's not, because the cameras are automated, as opposed to what Robin does, which is manually controlled cameras. We have to look where the cameras are at any one time, because quite simply they can move quite unexpectedly.
Okay.
They're controlled by the script automation system, not by a person.
Okay. I'm conscious that we're on deadlines. We've got 11 minutes to air, so follow me round. George is still rehearsing, but we're going to walk up to where he sits. Do keep your questions coming in for him if you can. And when he's finished his headlines, we'll just give him a second.
Farmers are told to keep their poultry indoors as bird flu sweeps across Europe. And remembering a golden age of British motorsport, Silverstone is to get a £20 million museum.
And coming up in the sport on BBC News, FIFA President Gianni Infantino wants to expand away 48 teams.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Opt in.
So this is obviously a rehearsal. George has gone to what we call the catwalk, or the stage over there. They'll probably put some pictures of Tata Steel behind him. That's the big story of the day. And then he's going to go through his opening script.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6. Thousands of jobs at Tata Steelworks in Port Talbot and elsewhere look secure tonight after unions and management hammered out a deal ending months of uncertainty. The company, which put
they are. They won't be in here for about 5 minutes.
Now made a 5-year commitment to steelmaking. In return, the unions are considering changes to the company pension scheme. The plan will now go to a ballot of workers. Well, let's join our Wales correspondent, Sian Lloyd, who's at Port Talbot, and I hope she's going to be there. Yeah.
Coming up in Sports Day on BBC News.
Okay, let's wander around here and see if we can get a quick word with George. George, are you free for a quick word? 1 second, okay. Should remind you we're about 10 minutes to air, so it does get a bit frenetic in here as people
keep their birds indoors to protect them from a highly infectious strain of bird flu, which is affecting flocks in Europe. The precautionary measure will last 30 days and applies to all those who keep chickens, turkeys and ducks, including domestic owners. The government says the risk to humans is low. Our Rural Affairs correspondent Claire Marshall joins us now from a turkey farm in Essex. So she'll be there too. Yeah?
hard enough without people like us interrupting, isn't it? Let's quickly just come up here because we're getting lots of questions, George, from our Facebook viewers. Just tell us, first of all, I'm going to ask one myself, what is it that you're hearing in your ear? And when you're looking down at the desk from time to time, what is it that you can see?
Well, down here, I've got our running order, and it gives me basic information like what camera I'm supposed to be looking at. But also, more importantly, there might be a line right at the top here, I don't know if you can see it, but which might mean a change in a story or something like that, which I would then alert to the team back in the gallery across there and say, look, have you seen this latest line? What was the other bit of your question?
No, I was just going to ask you what you're also seeing in here in the table as well, these screens.
Disconcertingly, I see myself
Yes.
actually, which is something I don't really like. But we can also monitor. I mean, let's say, for example, today Claire Marshall. Well, if I were sitting here, I'd be able to see whether she's in her place and ready to go, that kind of thing. So all of this is really about helping me to feel kind of secure, to know that everything is in its right place, and then I can make judgments. And similarly, actually, listening to Chris, have you met him yet?
We're going to go across.
You're going to go and meet him. Well, Chris is my best friend, actually, for the next half an hour. And I'm listening to him, and not just to what he's saying to me in my ear, but also what he's saying to the editor of the day, because those conversations might inform something that's going to happen in the programme. So that might be a conversation with David, who's editing today, might be the first I'd hear that a piece is going to get dropped or going to get moved further down the running order, or there's going to be a change.
Right. Charlie asks, in fact, a lot of viewers have asked, what is it that you most love about this job? And I should tell people that you used to be out in the field doing the jobs like Claire Marshall. Why do you like this job?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, this may seem strange since you're doing this in the studio, but the bit I like most about this job are the hours before I actually come into the studio. That's when it's a collaborative effort. There's an editor, there's what we call an SD. What would you call an SD? Sort of like a deputy. Senior duty editor. Anyway, there's Chris and myself and all the producers, and we're chatting, for the last 4 or 5 hours, chatting about the programme, how it should be made, and David and I will have a discussion about the order of stories, and that's the creative bit. What happens when we get here, I would say, is a little bit of kind of performance in a way. Yeah. And I can do it, and I quite enjoy it, but it's not the most interesting part, I don't think, in my opinion. I hope I haven't said the wrong thing.
We've got loads of questions for you. You're going to come and join us after the show, aren't you? Great.
Right.
So we will get a lot of those questions to George. We'll let him get on because we are, 6 minutes to air. So I'm going to take you through the newsroom to the gallery because I don't want you to miss the beginning of the show. I want you to see how it goes out from the gallery side live. But let's just nip through here. This is the tough bit for Robin. I'll go through first. So, as we go through the newsroom, I'll just give you a quick view of where everybody sits and who does what, if I can remember. It's a bit like showing people through your own home, this. If I can remember, I will do. But here are the intake desks. So, on the right-hand side there, you have audio intake, TV intake here, so they're taking in pictures, not only from the correspondents and the trucks in the field, but also from the agencies as well. Over the far side, over here, you have some of the reporters. So that's the reporters pool over here. Here's our Facebook team who have us on air at the moment. Hello, Facebook team. But the reporters over there who are either waiting for a deployment or are working on their stories at the moment. Through here is probably the key part of the newsroom. So you have in the centre here the news and foreign desks, the hub, if you will. They are monitoring the news as it comes in, and they're also deploying people to the stories as they see fit. So this man here, John, he is the Chief Deployment Officer or the Chief Deployment Editor within the newsroom. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So my job is to deploy our reporters and correspondents and crews up and down the country. So the big stories moving today being the Tata Steel story, the bird flu, the fact that all the chickens and turkeys have to be kept inside at the moment. And my job is dealing with the correspondents, the crews, reporters, dealing with the correspondents, sending them out, and of course dealing with them when they phone to complain like you that you've been dropped.
Yes, I can certainly vouch for that. Thank you, John. This man is crucial. This is the senior duty editor that George was talking about. This is Phil. Hello, Phil. Yeah. I know you're right up against it, so quickly tell us what you're doing before the programme goes to air.
It's just a few minutes before 6 now. My main concern is that our lead package makes it onto the server, which is actually the bit of kit that plays the package out that you watch at home as viewers.
Is it there?
It's not yet in the page, no. We've got about 4 minutes to go before we go to air. So I'm basically looking at the running order. Everything in this running order that's green is okay and ready to go. Everything that's red, a bit like traffic lights, stop, warning, it's not ready. So we're still waiting for our top piece to arrive and actually make it so we can broadcast it. with just a few minutes to go.
We'll leave you to it. You'll see over there Fiona Bruce, who's sitting tight for the 10 o'clock news. Hello, Fiona. Right, let's go through here towards the gallery. Over here, the news channel. Remember that Studio E that I've just shown you around is not just for the 6 o'clock news, but it's also for the news channel, which is going to go live straight after the 6 o'clock news, so it never rests, that studio. And you'll see at the end, as the gallery fills up with the next team that are coming in and Chris's team make their way out. Just before we go in here, I'm going to shut up, obviously, as the programme goes to air. So what you're going to hear is what George can hear, and you'll hear Chris's instructions. So there'll be periods where I go quiet, obviously, because it's the most crucial part of the programme at the top as well. But let me quickly show you around. So here we have the team. Over there at the far end is Paul Royal, the programme editor, who we'll talk to a little later. He's watching the rehearsals at the moment. We've got AutoQ over here. Say hello, AutoQ. That's Vix over there. She's doing the AutoQ for George. Wayne is on Light and Vision. So he's looking after the cameras, those automated cameras. They sometimes call this the lav. So if you hear someone saying who's in the lav, that's what it's all about. Over here you've got Alan, who's testing all the audio that's coming in from the trucks and the correspondence, making sure they all sound right. And this is probably the most crucial man of the whole operation. This is the director, Chris Cook. Hello, Chris.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I'll just quickly introduce the rest of your team. We've got Mark, who's your co-ed here, who's like the co-pilot, if you will, and David Brown is the daily output editor, who's making sure it all goes swimmingly well. Fingers crossed. Right, so Chris, this looks like a flight simulator. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking at.
Not really a Boeing 747. So as you can see, along here we've got the monitor stack. So that shows me everything I need to see. So I've got all my cameras, I've got mirrors of the screens that are in the studio on the catwalk, and the two screens to the left and the right of George. All my video servers and my graphics devices are on that page as well. In front of me, the screen on the left is what's going to happen next on the television. The screen on the right is actually the on-air monitor, and that's all controlled by this automation system here.
Okay. And on the far side, all the agencies, so you can see what's happening
down there, and all my outside sources. So we've got Sean and Claire on the programme. Sean from Wales and Claire from somewhere.
Okay. We'll try and talk to Sean. 1 minute to air.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
Good.
All right.
Hope you enjoy it.
So we will stand by the side here and we'll watch Chris direct. He's like a conductor. He's bringing all this team together, not only the team that are in here, but obviously George in the studio, the team outside. He's also speaking to the controllers of BBC One, because he's going to take over control of BBC One for the next half an hour as the programme goes live. So let's listen in.
Packages on the server. You all right, George?
Yeah.
Good. So it's just coming up to 1 minute to air now. 1 minute.
1 minute news.
This is the quiet bit. It's all gone very quiet. Does it? Just play it. Edit K, it's Chris. Can you hear me? Pete, can you get K across to
Yeah, just the page needs doing. He's put the package
No,
in.
but can he be on standby for me?
I'll get him. 30 seconds news.
Thanks. 30. Just get him to put it in the gate for me, please. 20 seconds. Counting to all there then. Good luck in 15. 10. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Cut on air.
Key.
New hope for steelworkers at Tata's plants in the UK. Unions and bosses make a deal.
Out of vision, read on.
More investment and a
next.
commitment to making steel at Port Talbot and other plants. Unions say thousands of jobs could be saved.
Pause. Sound.
To secure two furnace
Hours on this very significant. Coming back in vision, then up. Stop.
2, 1, 0 is very significant.
In vision. Q.
The workers will get the final say on the plan in a union ballot. Also on tonight's programme.
Pause. Sound.
My name's Denise.
Dip and
The
Q.
BBC investigation finds a 5-fold increase in the number of patients waiting in A&E for a hospital bed in England.
Bong. Q
The
on.
Supreme Court judges
Up,
weighed
stop,
Scotland's
next.
case for having a say in the Brexit process.
Pause. Sound. Dip and Q.
Just weeks before Christmas, farmers are told to keep their poultry indoors as bird flu sweeps across Europe.
Pause. Sound.
And away they go.
Dip and Q.
And
Nations and regions next.
The British Motorsport Silverstone is to get a £20 million museum.
Opt out, cut. Lovely, off you go to the catwalk, George.
10,
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Opt in. It'll be all right, David, don't worry.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6,
Envision on 1.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
to 3.
0.
And mix and cue.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6.
Mix the screens.
Thousands of jobs at Tata Steelworks.
So OS1 in the screen next.
Supporting it after unions and management hammered out a deal, ending months of uncertainty. The company, which put the business up for sale in March, has now made a 5-year commitment to steelmaking. In return, the unions are considering changes to the company pension scheme. The plan will now go to a ballot of workers. Let's join our Wales correspondent, Sian Lloyd, who's at Port Talbot. Sian.
OS1 sound, cut.
George, this
Lovely,
meeting
she'll take me
really
into the
went
VT.
up to the wire, and it's understood that it was difficult at times. It's now up to the company to sell this to the members. The future is in the hands of the workers. If they agree to this proposal, well, there could be a ballot early in the new year.
Package running. Lovely, Sean, well done. Thank you very much. Let's get John Moylan on then, please. Sending cameras to John.
Okay. So that was Sean talking into a top package. The package did make, so that's good. How did that go for you?
That was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's a bit tight. We were talking to the SDE outside, and he said the package wasn't there about 3 or 4 minutes to the hour. Is that normal?
It's normal. Yes, George, hang on. 4 to bring in John, and then 3 for trolley.
Yes.
We didn't have about 3 packages before we went on air, but now the trolley package has just popped in, the Supreme package has just popped in, and poverty is in. So the top is looking all right.
Okay. There's a lot of people asking what happens.
Yes, Pete?
Yeah, it's just the Pfizer Simpson you're waiting for.
Thanks, brilliant.
A lot of people asking what happens when it goes wrong. Do you have a backup system?
What, technically or editorially?
Both.
If it technically goes wrong, we've got backup systems of both automation systems that are running in sync. I've got backup video servers. If the package doesn't make, then it's up to David in conjunction with him to decide whether we should move stuff around in the running order. But, you know, most of the time.
How much collaboration is there between you and David?
Quite a lot. We're always talking.
Right, we're going to go and talk to David, because was your heart beating when the top package wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, tonight's a relatively, you know, dare I say it, I'll find some wood to touch, but it's been relatively smooth. I mean, obviously, in that run-up, quite a lot of packages are still being finished, and we've got one just here, actually. So our package on the Supreme Court with Sarah Smith has just gone in. So as you see through the show, quite often pieces are coming in and being finished off. So, you know, that for us, that was a relatively calm affair, I would say.
Craig asks, what's your best story that you've covered?
Personally?
Yeah.
And great, we've got...
Does it happen while you've been on air? Perhaps that's
You mean while I've been out putting a show?
Yeah.
I think probably the most recent one, just off the top of my head, was probably the day of the American election. The election of Donald Trump as US president is probably one of the best shows that I've done for a really long time, and a very significant world event. So that will stay long in the memory, I would say.
And just as Sean's package is coming out, I mean, they're all to time, these packages, aren't they? And she has, how long does she have for her live?
So she had for her live 20 seconds. She's slightly overstretched.
Coming out to 4 then, stand by.
I'm just going to get a timing out of this package actually, so you can see as we come out of this piece into John Moylan's live, he's got 1:22. So what I can do is...
So she overruns, do you have to cut other people back?
Yes, we do.
To 4
just
and
get the
mix,
timing out
thank you.
here. So we're into John now.
Our industry correspondent, John Moylan. John, just
better just
say that. What exactly has changed?
Well, one of the issues is that they cut costs. If you remember at the beginning of the year, they cut around 1,000 staff, and that's helped put the business on a firmer footing. But they've also been helped by increasing prices of steel around the world. Let's take a look at what's called hot rolled coil. It's what they make down at Port Talbot. If you go back to January 2015, it was trading at £355 a tonne, but a year later, it was right down at around £250 a tonne. If we bring that up to date, today it's now trading much closer to £435 a tonne. So there's been a really big improvement. That has helped things. Why has the price of steel gone up? Because raw material costs that go into steel making, they've gone up. but also because
Naming
in
job.
places like the EU and the US, they've got their act together. They've started to impose tariffs on unfairly traded steel, what are called anti-dumping duties. Now, there are big questions
So
still
thank you
tonight
on four,
for
turn
the
to
steel
three,
industry
takes
and
it
also
to
for
trolley.
Tata, not least over what happens to the huge pension scheme that is weighing over the firm, and questions for government too. There's
10
no suggestion
seconds.
tonight that the government has done a post-Brexit Nissan-style deal to make this all happen. The government would argue it has helped with issues like energy prices, but what the industry wants to know is steel part of the government's long-term planning and will still be at the heart of the government's forthcoming industrial strategy?
All right, John, thank you very
And
much.
to three, and three.
There's more evidence today of the strain the NHS in England is
So-
under. A BBC investigation.
So John took a little bit of extra time, but was pretty on the money. I thought that went really well actually, with the graphic explaining the steel price, and now we're kind of on into the show. So we build in a little timing buffer, and I've got a bit of time up my sleeve if people overrun.
So this under 41 seconds here.
Well done,
Yeah,
That's
so we
220 on this.
most nights, almost every night, we have 28 minutes and 45 seconds. And as we go through the show, people slightly underrun or overrun, and we adjust as we go through. So being about 40 seconds under at this point in the programme is pretty good, actually, because I'll probably soak up some time around the middle of the show, and then there's another little live hit with Claire Marshall, who's on a turkey farm in Essex, and that will probably overrun very slightly too. So that's probably about right for us.
Becky's saying, I'm amazed how much work goes into this. How do they keep concentration when so much is going on? I mean, that is key for George, isn't it?
George has got a very important and very difficult job, and he's hearing a lot of, he can hear me, he can hear Chris, he's hearing a lot of the show. I mean, that requires incredible focus, and George is one of the best people at doing that for us. Generally, you've got a lot going on, but we do this every day, and you sort of get used to the kind of flow of how things kind of unfold. So unless something really big happens, you know, it's relatively familiar for us.
Okay. All right. For the moment, David, thank you. Do keep your questions coming in. If you want to put questions to any of these people here on how they run this show, then do send those questions in at the bottom of the screen. I mean, we're just listening to David there. I mean, he's looking at the timings. What happens for you if you have to create space in all this here? How easy is it to do that? Because it looks pre-built.
It is pre-built, but we've got flexible items like the weather at the end, so we can have a chat with a weather presenter. We can, extend them, curtail them. They hate it when we curtail them because they run their sequences and they've rehearsed it. They have no auto cue, so they are our flexible buffer at the end. And when Matt comes in, I can say take your time on the hand to weather. Also, BBC One are a little bit forgiving of us of going under and over by about 10-15 seconds here and there.
Talk to us about those cameras, because we show Wayne, who's in light and vision in the lab. Is he in control of the cameras, or are you?
We do it together, really. Let me just get through this next link, and then I'll come back to you on the cameras, all right? 15 seconds, George. Outwards on this Macclesfield. Coming out to 4.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6,
The data
5,
does suggest
4,
pressure
Here we go.
in all
3,
NHS hospitals.
2,
Hugh
1,
Pym, BBC News,
0.
Mansfield.
And 4. Q.
The Brexit appeal at the Supreme Court has been hearing
Package
from
next.
Scotland's most senior legal officer today. He's been argued that because Scotland will be affected by UK leaving the European Union, the Scottish Parliament, and not just Westminster, should be consulted before Article 50 is triggered. That's the mechanism that will authorise negotiations with the EU. Here's our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith.
Package running. Lovely, 3
3
minutes on this, George.
Scotland's
So it's
most
camera
senior
4.
lawyer
So
brought a
you
new
can see,
argument
so
to
this is a
the
good chance to show the cameras.
They're hearing
Camera 4 is
from
currently on
all
its
four
inset
nations
shot.
with the
I
Scottish
can now
government
suddenly
pledge
change camera 4
not
to its
only
mid
should there
shot
be a vote
by
in
pressing that,
Westminster
and it will now
before
fling
Article
round
50 is invoked,
to the mid
but
shot
also
of
insisting
George.
Right.
So those are stored shots that Wayne has stored previously when
For
George
his height?
sits in
For
for
George's
his height,
height?
because all presenters are different heights.
Okay.
You know, Mariam Ashiri is much smaller than Ben Thompson on The Business, for example. So we store those shots, Wayne stores them. The automation takes them to those stored shots, and then Wayne can trim it.
Okay.
So if George has shuffled in his seat a bit, or it just needs slightly trimming.
Okay. Rosie's asking if I can just introduce people again, because there are people who are joining our Facebook Live. Do send your questions in. We're behind the scenes at the 6 o'clock news. Chris Cook here is the director, really the conductor of the show, bringing everything together. We've got Mark, his co-pilot, his co-ed sitting here, and Dave Brown, who's the Daily Output editor at the end, who is ensuring that everything is to time and running smoothly. That countdown, Francesca asks, it sounds like NASA. Who does it, and what does it mean?
That is Sophie Rayworth. She's on the button marked count. She recorded all these 10, 9, 8, 2 minutes, 3 minutes a long time ago.
I didn't know that.
It used to be Fiona Bruce. We fired her. So it's now Sonic Sophie, as we like to call her. And the programme timer, which is what the nations and regions hear when they're doing their little headline ops at the top and quarter past, that is counted by Hugh.
Right.
So you would have heard him count the 15 seconds through at the top.
And when I said you were taking control from BBC One, you are actually in charge of the ship right now, aren't you?
Yes, so you can
no
see,
pressure.
We've got, up on that screen in the corner, you can see the 2 BBC London paths, the net one, which is BBC One HD, and then the 2 channel paths. So it's channel path 1 channel, because we're on BBC One and the news channel at the same time.
Okay. James asks, what happens when big news breaks with seconds to spare? How do you cope with that?
Well, once it's been editorially authorised by the editor, it's, from our point of view, it's really easy. Cut to the presenter, off you go.
And that's where George earns his money.
That's where they earn their money. They've got the copy, they can read a number of lines. We'll then rely on the newsroom to cut pictures and to get those pictures into the transmission server.
Yeah. And that central news and foreign desk that we walk past, they'll find the reporter to scramble into the studio. So everyone's working towards putting that story on air.
30 seconds.
30 seconds on this, George. You've got 2 O's next, Pakistan and Quake, and then back on 3 for poverty.
Who have we got live in the field in this back half?
We've got
Camera
Claire
4, Chris.
Marshall coming up. Camera 4 for the 2 O's and 3 for
Well,
poverty.
you've suddenly gone faint.
Have I? Is that better? Can you hear me now?
10, 9, 8,
Coming out to 4.
7,
I'm not,
6,
somehow not hearing Chris very well now.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, 0.
To 4, mix and cue.
A Pakistan International Airlines plane carrying almost 50 people has crashed just north of the capital, Islamabad. Pictures from the scene show a trail of wreckage in flames on a mountain. The army has recovered some bodies from the site. The national carrier has been accused of safety failures in the past, though it's unclear what caused this crash.
And 4.
Rescue workers in the northern Indonesian province of Aceh are searching for survivors after a powerful earthquake killed nearly 100 people in the early hours of the morning. The Indonesian authorities say the 6.5 magnitude quake damaged hundreds of buildings in the same area that was devastated by the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004.
To 3, mix and cue.
There are nearly 4 million people in Britain still living in poverty, despite being in work. According to research by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, that's a record figure. People are classified as poor if they have to make ends meet on less than 60% of the average income, or about £14,500 for a couple with no children. Here's our economics editor, Kamal Ahmed.
Package running 3 minutes on this. So we'll do the halfways next.
3 minutes.
Maybe it's just when he's
Hello. Hi.
talking to Facebook.
Is that all right now, George? George, can you hear me?
5 minutes. Okay. Thanks.
No.
Can you check his pack, Jeff, for me? Claire, hello, love. It's Chris. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah.
Hello. So you're off the back of the halfway. George will throw to you.
Out on the field, doing a story about turkeys today. You'll see it down here on ISO 4, just on the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, it'll be in
Just the other side of that speaker.
in Scotland and in Wales.
Lovely. All right, my love. With you in just over 2.5. You hearing me now, George?
It's actually an OS2 as well at the top. In a barn full of turkeys.
I'm talking to everyone else. You're just tuning me out, aren't you?
Ahmed asks, who is responsible for the text that appears on the screen and
So
how is
there's
it done?
upsalt on this halfway, right?
There's upsot, so you're saying coming up on the Tartar Oov, pausing for upsot, and then I'll cue you off.
Okay, so that's after I say coming up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the text that's on the screen now, or
the text that's on, I think you might mean the text that's running on the bottom.
On the bottom. So on the news channel, the text producer is putting up the ticker, as we call it. We don't take the ticker on BBC One, so that's a feed.
But what about those Astons, the things that identify who this woman is here?
The Astons that identify this woman. So you can see on my automation scene, I've got what we call the little fish fingers. So there's an Aston coming up now, and when that timeline hits it, the 13th of July has come up.
So it's important the producers put the correct timings in.
So we can see that they're in at 1:41. Mark Carney, Governor of the Bank of England, on the 5th of December. That'll be in for a duration of 5 seconds, and then it'll take off. Okay. So that's all put in by the journalist who's looked after the package and has built.
Are you able to ask Claire at the back of her piece whether she would talk to us?
Yes. Chris, Claire.
Yeah.
Hello, love. We're currently doing a Facebook Live in the gallery here while the programme goes out on air. Would you be able to hang around once your package is on and someone might just like to ask you a question?
Okay.
Thank you, my love.
He's in the turkey farm, surrounded by turkeys. I want you just to get a feel for how she does her reports, because she has obviously been set a time for her live by David Brown, the editor who's sitting over here. So
just over
let's
a
find
minute
out
to
for a
you. Just
second.
under a minute to you now.
How long has
Just under a
Claire got
minute.
for her live?
30 seconds. She's got a little 20-second top, we call it. So it's a live top into her VT. Into her report. Yes, I beg your pardon. She'll probably take. Let's find out. Actually, we'll find out in just a sec. But she'll probably take about 30, I imagine, something like that.
Just on this screen.
It's up to you. 10 seconds.
Yep.
9, 8.
I'm easy either way, my love. 5 seconds.
4.
Stand by, George. Stand by, nations and regions.
2, 1, 0.
And mix 3 and
Just
keep.
leave it maybe like this.
Our top story this evening.
Go, Van.
Months of
Stop
uncertainty for
next.
thousands of
Line
Tata
B.
steel workers could be at an end. Unions and managers strike a deal to save the plants. Still to come.
Pause. Sound.
A great day for Graham Hill.
Dip and cue.
Remembering the
Nations and regions
characters
next.
And cars of British motorsport with a new museum at Silverstone.
Opt out, cut. Lovely, off you go.
On BBC News, Alistair Cook will have another new opening.
Stand by then, here we go.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go 1, go tag, cut, opt in, to 3 and cue.
So here's Claire's piece coming up.
Oh, it's 2 in the screen next.
To protect them from a highly infectious strain of bird flu, which is affecting flocks in Europe. The precautionary measure will last 30 days and applies to all those who keep chickens, turkeys and ducks, including domestic owners. The government says the risk to humans is low. Our Rural Affairs correspondent Claire Marshall joins us now from a turkey farm in Essex. Claire.
Oh, it's 2 and take it.
Thank you, George. These are free-range birds. They shouldn't be in this shed, but tonight
Package
strict
next.
new laws are in force. Normally, they'd be out wandering the fields and in the woods beside me. But just like in Scotland and in Wales, now they have to be kept undercover until all risk of bird flu has gone. That could be as many as 30 days.
Package running. Lovely. Thanks, Claire. Stay there for us. You can come back, George.
Just while this package is going out, Chi Min asks, I don't see George scrolling autocue. No, he has a lot to do besides that. That's Vix over here who's doing
You're on
autocue
4
for him. In
next,
fact, if
my
we go
love.
back
5
around the
seconds.
desk, I don't know if Robin, can you go backwards, Robin, or show it from the other side, because she has a little wheel. Not easy to manoeuvre around here, but she has a little wheel. There you go. So she's got quite a job, really, because if she gets this wrong, George has so many other things to think about that it's going to be quite difficult for him just to pick up the script from where he left off. So they work in tandem. Do you know his foibles and what he does, and do you get used to his mannerisms?
George really likes autocue. Some presenters don't follow it, but George is a fan of it, so he follows it to the letter.
And do some presenters have different words per minute? I mean, do they go quicker and slower?
Yeah, some have their quirks and they like to dance around the script a bit, but some follow it really. Yeah, you just get used to it how they are.
Okay, we'll let you get on, because don't mess that bit up. Okay, we'll come back.
Claire,
round
Chris,
to
you still there?
Hi, yeah.
Claire's here. Has she finished, or has she got a tail?
No, she's finished.
Okay. Claire, we were just going to ask you, it's Christian here, we're doing a Facebook Live. We were just going to ask you, when did you set off this morning? How long has it taken you to put your report together? And how do you keep your live to time?
So I left this morning at about
20
7
seconds,
o'clock.
George, coming out
7 o'clock this morning. That's having started last night. Finished my report at about 11:30 last night. So I was across all the pictures from Europe
10 seconds,
and abroad,
George.
having looked at them
4
on the
next.
internet last night. So I knew what was in my head, as it were. Then I started travelling at about 8 o'clock this morning. We needed to find a farmer who could let us into his farm. That's quite a big issue in terms of the kind of stories I do as Rural Affairs. You have to persuade farmers that what you're trying to do is provide the public with information, and I have to say quite a few are sort of suspicious of reporters. So it took some time to find a farmer who's willing to let us in and actually film his flock here. So then you start filming today. We started filming at about kind of
Talk to me, Chris.
Hello. 12:30.
Right, I've lost Chris.
And we put our report together very quickly, because it's always like that.
Chris,
George. To really sort of race around, and you're doing.
Can you hear me, George?
A bit of radio as well, and trying to keep across everything.
He's lost talkback as
well. I then file the report and straight into the 1 o'clock news, and then the rest of the afternoon you spend kind of looking around for what else you can film, so who else you can talk to.
Hello. Chris, talk.
Any more pieces of information.
Talk to me, Chris.
I'm talking. Where we are.
Okay, got you.
You've got to keep across what's happening in other
right,
parts.
so listen,
well,
3 and 3, and then 4
and then you have
for
to sit
Silverstone.
down and with your editorial cameraman put the whole thing together, which involves you have to script it for TV, which
But I tell you what, can we
little
reduce
bits of
the
text,
programme sound in my
little
ear,
bits of
Jeff?
writing, and then put it together with the pictures that you've gathered.
Brilliant. Thank
Maybe
you,
it's in
Claire.
here.
Good to see you. Go and get warm.
Well done.
So what was the problem with George's hearing?
I think his battery ran out.
On the pack, through his earpiece. Does
Yeah.
that happen?
Do you think I should turn something down here? Maybe I'm just getting too much in my ear. Too
Just a
much
little thing
programme
like that
sound
can
in
set
my
off the
ear,
panel, because
maybe.
he doesn't know what you want him to do.
So that's where I rely on Jeff, who's on the floor. So let's just get through these next two. So camera 3 next then, George. Stalking and Trump. Outwards, BBC News.
10,
10 seconds.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
To 3, mix and cue.
New powers are to come into force in England and Wales to help protect people from being stalked.
Out of vision.
It comes as the number of stalking offences
Trump
reported to
next.
police increased by more than 1,000 in the past year. New protection orders will be used to stop stalkers from approaching victims or sending them messages, and could result in jail if they are broken.
Back in vision.
Even before he's become president, Donald Trump has been named as Time magazine's Person of the Year for 2016.
Out of vision. 4
He
next then.
inaugurated as America's 45th leader in January. Mr. Trump was one of 11 contenders for the title, including Nigel Farage and Beyonce.
To 4. And
Some of the
mix.
cues from in here.
Sterling Moss, Jackie
Making
Stewart,
sure that all the
Nigel
cues are
Mansell,
accurate.
great names of British motorsport.
And keeping his eye on this running clock at the bottom. So we have, what, 14 under at the moment, and we're 6 minutes to the end of the programme, yeah? Yeah.
Reports.
Package. Well done, George. Lovely. So let's get Matt. Matt, are you there?
I'm here.
Hello, love.
Hello, I'm rolling.
The rest of their evening schedule
You right?
Got him.
You
So
got
sending
me?
cameras
is
to Matt.
tight, so they have a degree of flexibility, but not that much. So it's, you know, we try not to deviate too much from our allocated duration.
What? Someone's just been asking, how different is it running a bulletin like this to running the news channel? How many people are involved in producing the 6 o'clock news?
It's not that big a team. I mean, you can see people outside in the newsroom. I mean, we get about 5 dedicated producers through the day. You think, you know, I'm very proud to say, Britain's most watched news bulletin. With an audience typically of about 4.5 million, I mean that's a significant workload for people. The news channel obviously is a very different beast, isn't it? You're just responding to things very quickly. All the emphasis is on speed and reaction, or much of it, I should say. For us, it's more of a programme of record, so we're trying to put together a smoother ride for the audience, but one that takes in a real digest of the day's news. So I think it's a very different kind of creature.
And Mark asks, how do they work out what stories to use and in what order in the day's news? So, I mean, that's you, really, isn't it? You're the daily output editor.
Yeah. I mean, that's the job.
Are you collaborative? Do you work with the team?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that, you know, it's very much a team effort. We're very lucky. We've got some of the best TV producers in the industry and some very good editors, and all of our decisions are, you know, up for discussion, and there's a thriving sort of debate that goes on through the day about how we mould the show together. Some days are much easier than others. Some days have, you know, a very obvious lead, other ones not so much. I must just talk to George.
You're watching a Facebook Live behind the scenes of the 6 o'clock news. Madeline says, this is blowing my mind. I'm watching the news. I'm watching scenes on Facebook as well. Well, we're glad you're enjoying it, Madeline. Keep those questions coming in because we're going to have Paul Royal, the programme editor, outside in a little while. Chris is going to join us as well, and hopefully George once he's come off set. So get your questions in, as many as you can, and then we can have some fun with them. So we're coming up to 4 minutes to the end of the programme. Watch the weather presenters, by the way. Sometimes you forget just how professional they are. They do everything to time. So Chris will tell them they've got about a minute, and they hit it normally right on the nose to the last second. And it's really interesting to watch.
It felt like spring when I left home this morning.
Certainly is. It felt like we've sped through the seasons quite quickly. In fact, a complete change around over the past 24 hours. This afternoon in North East Wales, we've seen the warmest December conditions since 1972. Probably the biggest turnaround, the starkest contrast, though, have been in northern Scotland. Lovely scene here earlier on in Nairn. And in Nairn, yesterday morning,
that he's
we
doing this
started
without any auto cue, so he does it off the top of his head, speaking to the graphics behind him as he goes. He's got 2 minutes. He's very much on the clock. You'll see at the end of this that Chris will count him down. And usually they are within 2 or 3 seconds, aren't they?
Very, very good.
Another very mild night. Frost-free start to tomorrow, but mildest of all.
So what happens after this this weather bulletin? What's going to happen?
After this, we do what we call a hot seat change. So BBC One will opt out.
Yes.
I will run a 30-second channel sequence, which is a promotion.
Yes.
And then the channel presenter will pick up on the catwalk and take the news channel.
And George will leave. So there's a changeover in the studio, and there's a changeover in here. Correct. And then Studio E's live again.
Correct. And it just rolls on to become the news channel all evening.
Right through till
midnight.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just watch the end of this weather bulletin and the final headlines from George.
Temperatures down on today's values, but still up on where they should be for the
David,
time
you
of
only
year.
got one promo in.
Now, as we go through Thursday night and into
Shall I stick another one
Friday,
in?
suddenly winds start to bring another burst
I've got
of
one,
warm
I'll
air
just
across the
translate it.
country. So frost-free start to Friday, but this time it's Scotland and Northern Ireland's turn for some wet and windy weather to take us through the day, especially on the hills in the west.
Crusher, have you got
into
incoming?
northwest England, northwest Wales
Yeah,
later
he's
on.
here,
But
he's
much of
fine.
Wales dry, some breaks in the cloud, a little bit of sunshine, could lift temperatures to 15 degrees. As for your weekend, well, the mild air is confined to southernmost counties, but with it, the chance of
20
some rain.
seconds.
How far north that goes, a bit uncertain.
Plenty of
Much
time.
of northern half of the country, dry and bright, but strong to gale force winds in Scotland. That rain in the southeast may just be slow to clear on Sunday, but elsewhere, it's back to something a little bit cooler. Might be a touch of frost around
Take your
first
time
thing
on
in
the
the
hand
morning.
back.
Temperatures around 8 to 10 degrees, and that slightly cooler trend only lasts into Monday before some milder air works its way back.
And 1.
All right, now, thanks very much.
And to 3. And 3.
A reminder of our main stories today.
Go, Van.
Months of uncertainty for thousands of Tata steel workers.
So here we come to
could
the end
be
of the
at
programme.
an
This is the
end.
bit where Chris is going to
Unions
hand
and
it back
managers
to
strike
BBC One.
save the plant.
And Ball. Cue on.
And the BBC investigation has
Coming back
found
to
a
3.
five-fold increase in the number of patients waiting in A&E for a hospital bed in England.
And to 3. Mix and cue.
That's all from the BBC's News at 6, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we can now join the BBC's news teams where you are.
And take us, Prez.
Cut.
They've gone.
Clear. Thanks, Chris.
5 seconds under. Well done, everyone. Handing you over to, I think,
30
Roger's coming in now.
seconds.
And here's Roger, who will be the director for the news channel at 6:30. A couple of questions coming in. I'm going to get Alan before he disappears. Alan, we've got a question for you. How many audio feeds can BU be in control of all at once, asked Matthew. And what's the most you've handled?
Oh, God, that's a very good question. Probably a general election would have been the most, and it's something like sort of 36 outside sources. This desk can do 40, but you're only seeing a fraction of them. If I hit this other button here,
everybody is?
stickies, labels.
You put stickies on to tell you where they are.
It all helps.
Fantastic. Well done, Alan. Well done, team. So you're going to join us for some questions. Okay. So, and George is coming over. and hopefully also Paul's going to come over and join us. Paul Royal, the programme editor. So how was that for you? Was that a typical programme? I mean,
that went all right. It was relatively smooth.
Yeah.
There can be some screaming and shouting at some times, but I think it went
Move
quite
around
well.
here, then we can see the outside sources behind us. Hello, Paul. Let me introduce you to Paul Royal, who is the programme editor. So he's in charge of the 6 and the 10 o'clock news. So tell us about the audience, first of all.
In terms of the audience, the 6 o'clock news is the biggest TV news bulletin in the country. So its average audience is about 4.7 million, which is pretty high. And probably tonight we get bigger audiences in the winter when the clocks go back and people are at home when it's dark evenings. Probably the average audience tonight probably about 5.2 million. And on big days it will hit 6 million plus.
Okay.
So it's a big programme and big audiences.
Well, thank you for having us inside the programme tonight. Angel says, so engrossed, feeling like I'm there with you all. Just fascinating. Thank you so much, BBC. Olivia says, this is amazing. Thank you for doing it. I'm now working towards a degree in broadcast journalism, and it's always been a dream to be in the newsroom with you. So, I mean, you started as a producer. Chris, yes. You started as what?
I started in presentation back in 1997, and then ended up directing on News 24. And then ended up with the fabulous 6 and 10 team.
Yeah, and you came through the ranks as a junior producer.
Yeah, I started in local newspapers, and then I joined TV as a researcher, producer, reporter, and just went through the ranks. And as you know, Christian, I mean, the main thing is just be interested in things and be curious, and you can have a good career in journalism and broadcast.
George is joining us. Thank you for...
Well, George.
Right.
Yeah, he's the boss, so hopefully he was happy.
It looked good from where we are. It looked very good indeed. You did brilliantly. And I don't know how you kept your concentration as we were floating around you. So tell us...
I couldn't hear him half the time.
I know. Well, he was helping us. So tell us what it's been like for you then. Tell us, in a programme like that, what are your main concerns? What is it that you want to get past first?
Well, I think... there's two things. What you do before the programme, and that's, I mean, for example, the Supreme Court case, the Brexit case, really complicated. You've got to boil it down into 20 seconds, get it right, help our viewers so that when we get amazing people like Sarah Smith on air, she doesn't have to do the heavy lifting, she can do the analysis. So that's important before. Once in there, I mean, to be honest, as a presenter, I just wanted to be as calm as possible, And today was an incredibly calm show, actually.
And we saw your battery failed. I mean, just a simple thing like that, can that be really disruptive? Because you need to know what he's telling you, don't you?
It can. I mean, today it was okay, that we knew we had a minute to do it, but there have been occasions when that kind of thing happens and you've really got seconds to kind of swap things around, and you don't want that to happen.
Jackie asked an interesting question, Paul. When the news item is very harrowing, such as the Pakistan air crash today, who decides what video and which pictures can be shown?
Well, I mean, we sort of go through a process, and we have to, with the 6 o'clock news, we have to sort of bear in mind the 6 is actually in quite a unique position because it's a serious adult news programme in a pre-watershed slot. And so we have to do all the big important stories that are happening at home and abroad, and that might include difficult material and difficult subjects. And so then there's a judgment about how far we should go. There's quite often a lot of material that we don't use because we think it's not appropriate at tea time that we may use at 10 o'clock. So we go through a pretty rigorous process with producers, correspondents, editors, and generally we end up in the right place in terms of conveying the impact or the significance of the story, but without sort of alienating large chunks of the audience.
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you have an obligation, actually, when you're talking about the war in Syria, to describe to people, to show people how horrific it is. On the other hand, you don't want to do it so much, so they just go off and turn the telly off. It's a balance, absolutely.
Okay. Marcellus says, we love you, George, so much class. Henry says, how stressful is this job? I'm going to put that to you, because at the end of the day, you are ultimately responsible for what goes out.
If you've got a fantastic team, and
we people don't know you're a brilliant delegator. I mean, you do delegate and let them go.
No, absolutely.
Broadcast news and television is all about the team. That can sound like a platitude, but it totally is, because you could see in there one little link in the chain that goes down, whether it's auto cue, whether it's the director, the output editor, anyone in that chain. If that doesn't work, the whole thing comes tumbling down. So you absolutely have to have a fantastic team. And actually with these programs and what we do, don't think about it too much, because if you did think about it, if George stood there at 1 minute to 6 and thought, I've got 5.5 million people switching on, ready to watch me, you wouldn't actually get through the first 5 minutes.
No.
And so have a great team, know what you're doing, and generally the programmes work out. I mean, the flip side is there's always an element of unpredictability. We tried hard tonight because we knew we were on Facebook and everything else to try and get the programme as smooth and together as possible. But there's always that element of jeopardy or something just happening that you can't prepare for. That's always going to be there, and actually the audience quite likes that sometimes.
And this man is calm personified.
He's brilliant, you see.
Yeah. Yes. And we should tell people that you've done general elections, you've done referendums, you do the very big things. So this is a cakewalk, isn't it? Something like this. The Andrew Marr show.
It's still... You still get such a buzz out of that because, as George said, I think before you went on air, the best thing is the time spent with the team, sitting, getting it together, working out what graphics we're going to use. Once you get in there, yes, it's a different kettle of fish because most of the time it should go according to plan. But if it doesn't, that's where we earn our money and that's where George earns his money. We have to keep the show on the road. 6 o'clock is coming, whether we're ready or not.
Yeah.
We can't stop it.
Yeah. I'm scrolling through all these platitudes for you. There's just way too many. George, you're a pro, all the rest of it. Anyway, give up. What about the editorial control you have? You've got to read these scripts, and you've got to believe what you're saying. So how much do you have?
Well, I've got what I would say I've got influence. But the power in the end, as Chris was saying, we're putting out a show, it goes on at 6. So come 5:30, whatever I think, whatever David thought, or anyone, you've got to hand it over to somebody to say, listen, you make the decision. Up to that point, and it depends on the editor, of course, and Paul does give us an awful lot of influence. And the other thing is, I've been around for a long, long time. So you get experience, and that experience means you can have a little bit more influence on the programme.
One thing the audience always ask is, what do the presenters do and their day and their role?
I've just got that, actually. OJ says, what do you do between 6:30 and 9:55? But you're not doing the 10 o'clock news. What's really important is what you do between 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock.
Yeah, and absolutely. All our presenters are experienced journalists. Obviously, George was one of the BBC's finest foreign correspondents, and so they are fundamental and pivotal to the programmes and the editorial process. They also sort of have the benefit as well of that they sort of, when George comes in, he hasn't necessarily been involved in those first meetings in the morning. He's been listening to the radio, getting himself ready to come in, and so has a slightly fresher, you might say, sort of realistic perspective about what are the interesting stories of the day and what people are interested in as well. And so their role, and then they write all their own scripts, they shape all their questions, and they're critical to what comes out at 6 o'clock and at 10 o'clock.
Okay. It's been a great pleasure being with you. They're already saying, can we come and be with you for the 10?
Yeah, we'll do one for the 10.
So we will try and do it again. We will try and do it again.
So you've got to be as nice to Hugh as you have been to George.
Yes, exactly. I'm not sure you'll get as many platitudes as you, but we'll see. Chris, Paul, George, thank you very much indeed. And thank you too, as well, for being with us for this Facebook Live. Thanks very much.